Welcome back to Northwest City Politics in the Know with Juanita. We're glad that you're joining us again this week for our show. We're very happy that there are people like you out there, people that are interested in what's happening in our cities. Because it is important for good government that there be a flow of information back and forth between the city council and mayor, between the residents, between the staff. Then you get good ideas coming forward. So we're glad that you're interested. If you haven't watched our show before, each week we'll have on somebody from one of the 9 cities in Northwest Community Television's viewing area to bring us up to date on what's happening in that particular city. And we're very happy tonight to have John Elder from the New Hope City Council, my city council. So we're very happy to have you with us again this evening.
Thank you very much for having me.
We get lots of good ideas from you, so we're glad that you keep returning.
Thank you.
And I asked you, and you know that since you've been on before, if you would introduce yourself out to our wider audience, because I'm sure there's people not from New Hope who probably don't know you, to give them a little information about your background.
Well, I have lived in New Hope since 1988, and I live here with my wife and 3 adult children and 2 golden retrievers. I was a New Hope police officer for a series of years, left the department and got onto the New Hope City Council in 2008.
Right.
Since then, I've been reelected and continue to work hard to have the city move forward.
Okay, what we're going to start out with is, this has been in process for a little while, is that the council and the city staff have been looking at the needs for a new city hall and a new police department. And I thought maybe you could give us a little history on how long this has been going on and what's happened up to now.
You bet. Last summer 2015, the City Council appointed a 13-member commission made up of homeowners, people that are on the Crime Prevention Board, business owners, to come together and evaluate the needs of the city for its police department and its city hall. They looked at currently what we have now and made recommendations.
So you got a starting point with people from all branches of the city.
Yes, yeah. We wanted to make sure that all of the different avenues in the city were represented and were able to bring in something that's unique, that's important to them, whether it's a business owner, whether it's a citizen, whether it's somebody who's just on the Crime Prevention Board. Everybody has different needs and different thoughts and different perspectives. So we really wanted the most community input that we could get.
Now, is this like a task force?
Exactly what it is. Exactly what it is.
So what have they done so far, and how often do you hear from them?
Well, we were hearing from them with great regularity. It was interesting because the council was not on the task force.
Right.
And originally I thought that seemed a little off to me, but the more I thought about it and the more I talked to task force members, the more I realized that's such an important step to have it removed from us, so that we have a clear, a clear point of view. I have a unique point of view, as does Eric Lamley, another city council member. We were both police officers in the city of New Hope. We know the limitations of the building of City Hall, as well as the real severe limitations of the police department. What this task force has done is they have spent time touring, studying, and going through our buildings. Our building being that of the police department and that of City Hall.
Yeah, and they're combined together for people that don't know New Hope.
Yep. And they really studied what's right and what needs improvement in the building. And they found that the building has some very severe challenges, challenges that just aren't easily fixed.
Sure.
Our roofing system is in very bad shape. Our systems of cooling and heating is deplorable. Our police department was built back in the 60s when we had far fewer officers. We didn't have a secure interview area. So there's a number of very, very serious challenges with the facility. And they also toured a number of other similar sized police
okay.
departments and came back, and they also studied the financing of
Okay.
it. And they actually met with the finance folks for the city and came back to the council in September and made a recommendation to us.
And so their recommendation was to,
To do a new
Okay,
city hall
okay.
and a new police department. 2 new buildings,
Okay.
actually have them be separated. And the important thing to that is that if they are going to be separated, they have to be close and there has to be a walkway between
right,
the two.
right.
And the task force made that presentation to the city council, and then they assisted in the open houses that occurred in November, and they dealt directly with the public.
Right.
So the nice thing about that is that these were people that cared enough to spend a good
right,
amount of time
right.
to really research this, come up with some thoughtful recommendations to the city, and then they stood behind it. And they met with the people from the city who came into these open houses and said, you know what, when they got asked questions, sometimes I said, you know what, I had that question also. And this is the reason why we
Right,
chose this. They just did a phenomenal job. And people that are willing to do that, it was really neat to see.
Right.
We had a landowner, Kimberly Dunn Lewis. We had a business owner, Kent Garbers from Frankie's. Just a number of really good people that care a lot about the city of New Hope.
Because now then, once you got to that point, then
Mm-hmm.
the city council made the decision to start taking the next steps.
Yes.
And I believe that the next step was when you hired an architectural firm,
Right.
Wold. So what did you ask them to do? Because there's a lot of steps along the way before
yeah.
you get to where anything is settled concrete and
Oh,
finished for sure. 'Cause
this isn't done.
No,
No,
there's a lot
this
of
is
steps.
far from done.
So I thought, let's go like step by step.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We brought in Wold Architect. We've hired them to come up with conceptual designs.
Okay.
And that's real important because Wold has a really rich history of building police departments and city halls. They did Richfield, they did Prior Lake, and they did Cottage Grove. All cities that are pretty similar in size to our police force and of course our city government.
Right.
So they Wold seemed to be the right choice for this task.
And so they're in the process of doing that now.
Yes.
And then when will they come back to the city council?
They will be coming back to us in midsummer
Okay.
with information, and we'll be able to see what they've come up with. Now, some of the things that we have gotten on public feedback, and we love public feedback, and I know you're always so
Oh,
good
right,
about trying to spur people on to
Right.
reach out, because if people aren't paying attention and they hear about something at the end of it,
Oh, right.
people get very angry about that.
Oh, they
and,
can, right.
and they think that, oh, well, you're being subversive,
Yeah.
or you're trying to sneak. And well, no, we've actually had several public meetings about this, and that this could be any
Anything, right.
issue. And we understand people have lives to lead, and watching city government sometimes is one of the things that falls off of the
Right.
radar. But we had some citizens that were astute, and they had received a notice. We put a notice out to 1,000 feet, completely surrounding the City Hall campus, and explained what we wanted to do, and we looked for input, and they came to public hearings. And there was a very, very strong sentiment not to put the police department and City Hall where there is now park space.
Right, right.
Even
right.
if we said, you know what, we'll put City Hall and the police department back where the park is, and we'll put the park where the
Right,
current City
right,
Hall is.
right.
Well, people didn't want much of that at all. So financially, the best way to do it is to build exactly where we're at.
Right.
But it's tough to run a police department and a city hall.
How?
Yeah, when you're demolishing a building and starting
Right,
anew.
right.
So that was one of the things that the group looked at, the task force looked at, was is this a remodel job or is this a demolish and rebuild? And it was actually cheaper to demolish and rebuild. So that's what City Council's looking at, and what Wold Architects is working
Well,
on.
and then the architects are going to give some ideas on locations within the framework of the land that's
Correct.
part of the city center, right?
Exactly. Yep, exactly.
And then there will be opportunities for more citizen involvement along the way?
Absolutely, absolutely. The task force will reconvene. They're kind of at a hiatus right now during this time when Wold is doing their drawings.
Right.
They will reconvene in the spring and will meet with several of the neighboring landowners.
Right.
And have conversations with them, work through some of the plans that Wold brought forward, and then they will come to the City Council early summer and make an additional recommendation at that point. And then there will be more open houses,
Right.
and citizens can absolutely come to those and speak up.
Yeah, so we'll encourage those of you out there that are from New Hope, keep track of this process, because there'll be opportunities when you and the city staff and the rest of the council will need to hear what people think.
Absolutely.
Now, road construction has been a topic on your agenda many different times and a lot of discussion on it. Maybe you can tell us, because New Hope has been putting together a 5-year plan for roads. Maybe tell us about it, how you got there and what you're hoping to do.
Thank you. Interesting. We've always had a plan for roads, but it was a 30-year plan.
Right.
And we knew at some point that we were going to be getting to a point where our roads were in disrepair faster than we were fixing them. And so the city staff and this council met, and we realized that we don't have to be doing all these road reconstructions where you pull out all of the road, all of the subgrade,
Right.
all of the curb and gutters. That's more work than we really need to be doing. And so we have a 5-year plan that will do some of the full reconstruction, and I'll explain that in a minute, as well as the majority of the streets being mill and overlaid. And what that means is they have a grinder that comes up, and it chews up and sucks up the top 2 inches of the road surface.
Where the potholes are.
Absolutely, absolutely. And gets it down, and then they come right behind with a fresh layer of asphalt, and it goes right over what you've already chewed up and sucked up and cleaned up, so that you're lifting up that part of the road and you're putting in brand new right behind it. There are areas where we have to replace curbing, where the curbing's just broken. So at that time they do those curbs, as well as we're getting all new manhole covers, which really seems like such a mundane statement. These manhole covers do not have the hole in the center because through our I&I process, we're finding a lot of water is going down through the manhole covers, and it's increasing our I&I infiltration problems, where water's getting into our sewer system that shouldn't be.
And then the cities get punished with
Oh,
fines,
yes,
right?
oh, do we ever.
Right.
So that's one of the things that we're doing. This will get the majority of our streets, this 5-year plan, will get us up to a good pavement rating.
Well, and that's important for attracting people to your community, right?
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah. And many of my neighbors, we had our street redone in 2011. And many of the neighbors were like, the street's fine. Why are we redoing our streets? This is ridiculous. Don't spend the money. And they redid the street, and people loved it. People, it is such a nice amenity to have a good road. And New Hope has been known largely for really good quality roads. Where we get the challenges is on the county roads. You know, Winnetka was in horrible shape for a while. 42nd had been problematic. Bass Lake Road at times can be problematic, and getting people to understand that, yes, it's within our city limits.
Right.
Those aren't our roads, and
Right,
we
right.
can't address that. So new roads, nice roads, really do a great deal for quality of life as well as home values.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Now, what streets will be worked on this summer? Do you have any details?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I do. 49th is going to be a complete reconstruct.
Okay.
We are reconstructing streets where we have evidence of multiple failures in the infrastructure below. And it doesn't make sense to redo a road if you just have to keep digging down
Right.
through it to
Right.
replace water lines. And so those are the roads that we are doing reconstruction on. The rest are mill and overlay. 42nd is one of our state aid roads. And we are going to be redoing that from Boone to Winnetka.
Okay.
In fact, at this time, that's shut down to through
Right,
traffic.
right.
And so that's a real thoroughfare. And so that road is being built up to a 10-ton road, and it's going to be shifted some. And there's going to be parking on the street on the one side. The city appears like they may be putting in fencing along the south side, and there will be a shared walkway, pathway on the south side of the road, 10 feet wide, that will allow for pedestrian and bicycles.
Sure.
So that's important. There's also, the road shifts some and moves a little for the fact that we did some speed calming techniques with the road design, with the hopes that people will slow down on that roadway. We also have a traffic unit that will be spending a great deal of time out there once that road is completed to ensure that people understand that 30 miles an hour means 30 miles an hour. It's still, despite the fact you have a school on one side, it's still a residential street.
Oh, definitely.
You have to monitor the speeds on that, and our police department is very good at that.
Okay, which streets besides 49th are being constructed?
The streets between 36th and I believe 42nd, west of Boone, are all being redone, whether it's Miller overlay and some sections of reconstruction, as well as Quebec on the east side of town between 49th and 42nd is going to be redone, and as well as 49th from Winnetka over to Quebec.
Okay.
So those are a number of the streets that are going to be redone. It's a really aggressive project this year. Thankfully, with the weather, it looks like they're going to get an early start on it. So that's good stuff.
Now, New Hope has a different way of funding your streets. Maybe you can speak to that a little.
We do, and that is something that's wonderful. People will say, well, you know, my taxes are higher.
Right.
My taxes are higher than some other cities. And that may be true.
Yeah.
However, when we put a new park in by your home, we don't assess you that, whereas these other cities are.
Right.
And when we redo the street in front of your home, you will not be assessed for it. Those are what's in your taxes. And a number of years ago, the city started an infrastructure fund where people are taxed up front, and that money gets put into this fund, and that's the money that we are using to help pay for the redoing of the roads. And that, I got a phone call from a Crystal resident who was just besides themselves that they were getting assessed $12,000 to have their street done, and they lived on a corner, so they had to pay more. But they said even if it was $6,000, who has $6,000 sitting around? And you know, so there are people in other cities that are fighting to have their roads done, to not have their roads done. Where in New Hope, people get new roads, mill and overlay, reconstructed, whatever the need is at that point, and they're not paying anything at that time for it.
Because it's like a small amount every year.
Yes.
Instead of a big, huge thing once.
Right, and it can also affect people when they're buying homes.
Oh, right,
And people
right.
will be like, well, okay, if I move here, I know I'm going to have a $8,000 bill next year. That's just added right onto the house, and now maybe it's not, this house isn't right for me. Citizens, once they find that out, really seem to be very appreciative. But again, it's about educating people,
Oh,
and that's
right.
that's the great thing about
Definitely.
shows like this.
Right.
It helps educate.
Let them know.
The streetscape was put together by a designer, and we looked at some other cities that had even small-scale streetscapes. You look at the city of Golden Valley in the area
right.
of Winnetka and Golden Valley
Right.
Road. They have the arbor,
Right.
and they have the benches. It looks very homey.
It does,
looks
yeah.
really nice. And so the city, through their developer, came out with a streetscape plan that included narrowing the road,
Okay.
what included good size walkways on each side. There will be shelters there. There will be canopies there. There will be benches. There's a nice, really tastefully done electric sign that's going to be going in on the corner, electric sign that's going to be going in on the corner right across from Wells Fargo.
Right.
And it's going to give a real pedestrian-friendly feel. People can go into the Hy-Vee. People can go into the Caribou, any of these other places.
Right.
Come over and have a place to sit. There will be shade structures there. It's going to be very tastefully done.
And be kind of a focus.
Absolutely it will. Absolutely it will. We want people that are coming into the government center area, into the city center area, to really come into something and go, wow, this is nice.
Yeah.
And again, destination in mind.
Right.
People may say, hey, let's go to Hy-Vee and get this, and we can go sit outside. It's a gorgeous day.
Yeah.
So we're excited to have. I'm really excited to see the end result on it. And again, city staff did a remarkable job putting this together and really making it come through.
I read an article all about TIF, so I've been asking many people from many cities about them. And originally it was set up, I believe, to deal with blighted houses and bring in new jobs. What kind of changes have taken place over the years
New Hope.
that you notice in New Hope?
New Hope has primarily used TIF for redevelopment and housing.
Right.
And that's always been that way. Very, very little has changed in what our focus is for TIF. We're putting an emphasis on using TIF as a financing tool to help the city redevelop.
And so that if I'm right, it allows the city to do some things that attract people in that you wouldn't be able to attract.
Absolutely, absolutely. Case in point, the city buys a parcel of land, and they want to get a business in, and they realize this business can't afford what we paid for that land. Kmart.
Right.
We buy Kmart, we have to demolish it.
Right.
We have to get the site somewhat ready. Hy-Vee comes in and says, wow, this is fantastic. We want this to be our first Minnesota store.
Right.
We start talking numbers and we look and we're like, well, we paid a fair amount of money for this and the demolition of the building, and all of that was necessary for us to do so that we could control the redevelopment of it. I still stand by the fact that we did the right thing by purchasing that so that, again, we can control that. Hy-Vee comes in and says, hey, we would love to come here. This is what we'll do for the community, but I will tell you, we can't pay that price. So we sell the land for the most amount we can get for it, and then we can use TIF money to cover that gap.
And the TIF money can only go for certain kinds of things,
Absolutely, absolutely. TIF money can be used for redevelopment, infrastructure, and gap coverage are three other things that we largely use it for.
So that it gives that a little extra help.
Absolutely it does. Absolutely it does. And it does draw businesses. And you will have some people that will argue and say we're giving away money. Well, you know what? I would disagree with that respectfully. We're bringing businesses into
Right.
the community. And if we can provide businesses to the community and we can provide the things that people need,
Right.
it's the right thing to do as long as the price isn't too high.
Right, right. So that cities have to decide how much, let me back up a little bit. Tell me if this is right. Here's this layer, and this property is bringing in this amount of taxes now.
Yep,
But when you build a new thing on, like the Hy-Vee or whatever, it's going to bring taxes up here.
yep,
That's the increment, right?
absolutely.
So that increment can help pay off the money that you use to buy it and fix it.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And that money can be used. We used TIF money from other projects to help us do other
Right.
other TIF projects. So it's really a nice way for us to be able to use a pot of money that's not coming out of the general fund.
Right.
It's a nice way to do it.
Well, and some of the disadvantages are that this money that's here, it's how long you're going to take that away, and
Exactly.
it affects the county and it affects the school districts too.
It does. It absolutely does. And that's the downside to TIF.
Uh-huh.
However, that's why we want to keep the TIF districts as short of a time period as possible.
Right.
And when you look at what Kmart was bringing in for taxes versus
Right.
what Hy-Vee will be bringing in for taxes when that TIF district expires, that's going to be very large.
And this is all controlled by the state, right?
Absolutely it is, you bet. In fact, when the TIF districts expire, if we don't spend that TIF money on approved
Right.
expenditures, we lose it.
Ah,
So it's a way of really kind of forcing us to spend the money
Right.
on the redevelopment and the infrastructure, which an aging city needs.
well, and older cities aren't as attractive to businesses coming in as the ones that have that empty land out there waiting.
Correct. That's right.
So it kind of balances out a little bit.
It does, and one of the really nice things that I like to point out to businesses that I'm trying to lure into town is that, yeah, those new places are nice, but we already have an established community.
Right.
And we have people that have a need, and this business can fill that need.
Well, I want to thank you so much for sharing your time and your ideas with our audience. And we want to encourage you to tune in next week for part 2 of New Hope's Issues. We're glad that you've been with us. And we hope that you've taken, if you're from New Hope, that you've taken down John's phone number and email so you can be in
Please.
contact with him. Or if any of the issues are resonating with you, and we're glad you've been with us, and we'll look for you next week. Bye.